Developing Asia is the fastest growing region of the world and the subject of a study by Dickson Ho, Principal Economist with HKTDC. And Dickson, can I start by asking you really what are the real drivers in Asia amongst those different countries?
I think over the next few years, developing Asia it will continue to be the fastest growing region in the world. But if you take next year, for example, the major drivers for this change or this growth would be China, Indonesia, and India. And China will lead the pack because China is expected to grow more than 8% next year, followed by 6.5% in Indonesia and around 6% in India. And these economies are significant because China, India, and Indonesia are the largest, third largest, and sixth largest economies in Asia Pacific. And altogether, they account for 40% of the world's population. As the external environment worsens, and every country in Asia tries to do something to compensate for the loss of export orders. And some countries are better positioned than the others. In terms of China, I think it's very clear under the China's 12th five-year plan, it says that the Chinese government wants to rebalance the economy by spurring domestic demand, in particular private consumption. And China is well positioned to do that just because as a share of GDP, private consumption expenditure actually accounted for only 35% of the GDP, which is the lowest in Asia.
People often talk about a shift of economic gravity from west to east, but what about within Asia itself? Is there a greater dynamic now within Asia?
Well, the dynamism is always there and is still going on very strongly. But first of all, let me give you a few numbers. The advanced economies right now account for slightly over 50% of the global GDP. But a decade ago, they were accounting for around 60% or more. So that means in a matter of 10 years, they lost 10% in terms of the global GDP share. But for developing Asia, they now account for about 1/4 of the global GDP, picking up by almost 10 percentage points in the past 10 years. That means what the advanced economies lost would be gained by the developing Asian countries.
One of the theories that you've introduced into your study is that of the paradigm of the wild geese. How does that come into play?
You're rightly in pointing that out, just because the shift in economic gravity happened very visibly over the past 10 or 15 years. But actually, the catalyst for such a change could actually date back to something much earlier, to Asia's earlier industrialization and transformation. And very interestingly, this was a prediction made by a Japanese economist by the name of Akamatsu. Just visualize. This is a very simple theory. If you look at the pattern of industrialization as a horizontal V, with Japan making the lead, and there will be other geese following in a pattern according to their different stages of industrialization and transformation. And Japan would take the lead, and followed by the newly industrialized economies, which are Singapore, Taiwan, South Korea, and Hong Kong. And after that will be the ASEAN 4, which are the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, as well as Indonesia. We also got the latecomers, such as Vietnam and China. This sets forth an order of a pattern of flying geese. And we also have the latest comers too, which are the Bangladesh and Cambodia. And we believe that Myanmar will be the next goose. So as the lower order goose going through a process of import substitution to export-oriented production, they naturally produce something more. And who's going to be their market? Actually, it would be the flying geese of the higher order, which naturally turn into their markets. As the flying geese themselves upgrade and diversify their product manufacturing, this tend to create a very, very intricate network within themselves. So that's why over the past 20 years, we have also seen a very rapid growth in intra-regional trade in Asia, which are gained by about 12%. But in terms of the growth in developing Asia, the growth was even more profound. It actually went up by 14%. So that signifies the flying geese themselves play a very important role in the transformation of Asia from merely a production base into a consumption market.
So talking about developing Asia, where do Hong Kong products really fit into the picture?
Definitely, Chinese market would be the most major important market because the Chinese authorities have made it a commitment to rebalance the economy, and they are trying very hard to spur domestic, in particular, private consumption expenditure. And I think this would create very substantial demand for goods that are well designed and of good quality. And Hong Kong companies are having the strength in filling in such a market. But as more people going into the mainland market, we will see that the competition and price sensitivity tend to go up. And that's the reason why some Hong Kong companies are starting to focus on second tier or even the third tier cities in China. But as competition gets intense, I would advise the Hong Kong companies to diversify their markets a little bit and pay some attention to other markets as well. For instance, India and Southeast Asian markets. Because these countries, in terms of their retail sales market, grew at double-digit rate over the past 10 years.